Hey guys, so today we're going to do this a little bit differently. As you can see, I have my screens kind of split here because we're going to talk about something that's really, really, really complex historically, but something that you don't really need to know for the curriculum and the way that we do it. All right, so the way that IB is set up is a paper 2 topic, and I'll talk to you about what paper 1 and paper 2 and paper 3 actually mean down the line a little bit. But the way that it's set up is it's split into causes, practices, and effects of war. We talk a lot about the causes. We just did that in Unit 1. We talk a lot about the effects. That's Unit 3 and 4 for the First World War. The practices we don't talk that much about because, in my opinion, they're very, very, very difficult. And a lot of students don't really like preparing for those questions. So I do kind of a cursory overview. So I'm taking something really complex. You could take an entire course in a college on the practices of World War I, right? And I'm trying to boil it down to its simplest components, which is why I have this notepad here, just so all of you can walk away with kind of this base understanding, right? If you're super into war and warfare and battles and that stuff, let me know and I can give you some other stuff on World War I, because you might want to prepare for a practices question, all right? IB is very, very, very... IB history is very good for students who are independent, right, and want to go off maybe on their own thing and take what's done in class and do a little bit of side work to prepare a paper. So you guys will be able to kind of choose your own adventure when it comes to writing the exam. So if you're what I call a practices person, let me know, and you would have to go above and beyond what I write in this note column here, right? But if you are not a practices person, what I'm writing is going to be relevant for other stuff, right, for the causes and effects of the wars themselves. So just make sure you at least understand what I'm writing down, and if you don't understand other things, that's okay. So let's get into it. World War I, the Great War. It wasn't called World War I when it happened because they didn't know that there would be a second one, right? So it's 1914 to 1918. It was known as the Great War or the War to End All Wars. All right, so it starts here. All right, this is the Schlieffen Plan. Okay, the Schlieffen Plan was the German plan for invading France. Okay, Germany wanted to avoid, and this is going to be one of the first things, right? A two-front war. All right, Germany wanted to avoid that. So what a two-front war is, I should have. I'm going to pause this a second. All right, we're back. I drew a quick picture, right? Because of alliances, Germany is what we call encircled by allies, right? So Germany being in the middle, oh, where's my finger? Oh boy, right here, surrounded by France and Russia on both sides. So if they were to fight a war, they would have to fight on, oh god, this is harder than it looks. They would have to fight on two separate fronts. All right. So anytime you have a two-front war, let's say you've got 10 million troops in your military. Can you ever use 10 million troops at once? No, because you've got to split them up for both fronts. So fighting a two-front war is incredibly difficult, and Germany wants to avoid that at all costs. So the plan is to go into France, beat France really, really, really quick, make France surrender, turn around, move to Russia before Russia even mobilizes, and then beat Russia. All right, that's the plan. All right, it's genius. No, it's not at all. All right, the Schlieffen Plan was designed by very overconfident, very nationalistic leaders who thought that we beat France once. Now we're way stronger than we were back then. We're going to be able to beat France very, very quickly. And they were very, very incorrect. Okay? Some reasons that they thought they would be able to beat Russia before it mobilized was Russia has a very bad military. It's got very bad railroads, and it's huge, right? So to get from one place to another is very difficult in Russia. What they did not account for is when we talked about the short-term causes, Russia starts to mobilize after the blank check, right? So they're already ready to go to war, and Germany didn't account for that when the Schlieffen Plan was created, right? Okay. A failure for these reasons. You don't need to know why. I'm going to breeze through this one. All right, so the first major battle in World War I is the Battle of Marne. All right. If you don't remember that name, it's okay. But here is the Battle of Marne, right? This is going to be the front that they are fighting on. So the Germans are going to go through Belgium. They're gonna get resistance from the Belgian military, as you saw in the last slide, right? It didn't plan for resistance from Belgium. That's one of the reasons that the Schlieffen Plan failed the way that it did, right? So what happens is that the Battle of Marne is taking place, and it's in the Marne River Valley where it gets its name, and both sides are very overconfident in their military abilities, so they don't really have very well-developed plans for what's going to go on in this first battle. So they're given initial orders, they go and they fight, and there are no follow-up orders. So they don't really know what to do once they're on that battlefield. So the next set of instructions are going to be to flank, all right? And when I say the word flank, I mean come up from the side, right? So let's say that you've got fighting going on right here, all right? The Germans are going to try and flank the French, okay? They're going to try to come from the side of the French. Then the French are going to flank the Germans, and then the Germans are going to flank the French, and then the French are going to flank the Germans, and then the Germans are going to flank the French, and so on and so forth until they hit the sea, all right? This was known as the race to the sea. That's the one thing that we have to try and remember about the first battle of World War I. They're going to flank until they get to the sea, and then they can't flank anymore. And after that, it was like, well, what do we do now? Right? They didn't really have these very well thought out plans of attack. All right, first Battle of Marne. Known for the race to the sea. Something cool, right? The advent of modern technology. All right, we're going to see technology used in World War I that we've never seen used in war before. Things like taxis and buses, right? Motorized vehicles are going to be used in warfare, and we've never really seen that happen before. So we're going to be able to transport troops very, very, very quickly, which is going to change how wars are fought. And if you look now, today, transporting troops is very, very important if you're going to fight a ground war. Does it say it on the slide? Yeah, another one is air, right? The airplane is invented shortly before World War I happens. So the French are going to fly planes over the German lines to spy, right? That's how planes are used at first. These are not planes that can drop bombs yet, or planes with guns on them, or planes meant to fight other planes. They are reconnaissance planes. All right. So any kind of sneak attack or any planning the Germans were doing were very quickly found out by the French because they had planes in the air, which made it easy to spy. All right. Go. All right. So what I just said, the battle, the race to the sea, right? So they're racing to the sea. They're going, and then it's like, now what do I do, right? So soldiers are going to start to dig holes in the ground. All right. If you ever become a soldier or know anything about being a soldier, you don't really want to stay out in the open very long because you'll probably get shot. So you dig a hole in the ground. They're called foxholes, and that's what you sleep in. You sleep in them for cover and protection. All right. Except these holes started to get really big, and then they started to connect the holes, and then more holes were connected, and then other holes were connected, and it developed into trench warfare. All right. So what we have happen in World War I is we've got these very deep, large, elaborate trenches on one side, and then you've got a stretch of land, and then you've got these very deep, elaborate stretches of trench. That's very difficult to say. On the other side. Okay. So World War I, the Schlieffen Plan, and then the French plan was called Plan 17. It was the same exact idea, just beat Germany really quickly, right? They were thought to be very fast wars, but because of trenches, because of the digging in, World War I became a very slow-paced war. All right, very, very, very slow-down war. All right, the trenches. We talked about this. All right, that stretch of land in between two trenches is called no man's land because they were filled with mines and artillery shells were constantly bombing it, and there was barbed wire and dead bodies and all this stuff. That was called no man's land. All right, you really don't want to be in no man's land because the chances are you'll probably die, right? If any of you have seen the movie 1917, all right, last year I took my junior class to go see it in the movie theater. Obviously, this year we can't do it, but if you're sitting at home and want to see what I'm talking about when I talk about World War I and the type of fighting that happened, just watch the movie 1917. All right, it is fantastic, and it does a very good job accurately articulating what went on in the First World War. All right, if you had to go and attack an enemy trench, it was called going over the top. All right, you didn't really want to go over the top, but sometimes you had to do it. Picture time. All right, this is what I mean by elaborate trenches, right? Let's call this the German trench, and let's call this the French trench. French trench. Hard to say French trench. All right, they're elaborate. They're almost cities, right? Back here we might have a mess hall where soldiers get to go eat. Back here we'll have a medical tent where wounded soldiers are. These were almost cities that were dug into the ground, and it makes it very, very hard to attack an enemy trench, and very, very easy for the war to become, like I said, slow. All right? All right, now here's a little bit of a closer depiction. You can always go back into the line, right? You don't really want to go over the top. You don't want to go forward. The farther back you go, the safer you are. All right? Some more pictures of trenches. There's actually a lot to these pictures. I'm going to break them down real quick, and then I'm going to pause for part one of this. So this trench, what do you see? Pause the video, take a look at it. What do you see in this picture? All right, the thing that jumps off my head, that's something you need to know about World War I, is twofold. One, this dude's alone, right? World War I was a very, very, very hard war on this, right? On the mentality of a soldier, right? A lot of soldiers are going to walk away from World War I with severe mental health illnesses by how terrible the war was, both in terms of casualties and death and violence and disease and hunger and starvation, but also things like loneliness, right? Imagine being alone in this trench and nightfall happens and all you hear is bombing in no man's land, just artillery shells going off all night long, and you don't know if the Germans attack this man, he's dead. You don't know when your time is going to come. It was very, very, very hard mentally on the troops, right? And then this is number two. Actually, let me take note. Right? Disease. A lot of disease in World War I. Look at this dude right here. He's dead. Right? He's dead. No one's come to pick him up yet. He might be there for a day, 3 days, a week, 2 weeks, until someone comes to dispose of that dead body. And what's going to happen if it rains in this trench? Is there an irrigation system to drain the water? Nope. That dead body is going to float. And with dead body comes what? What eats dead bodies? Like rats. Do rats carry disease? Yup. What happens when the rats go to the bathroom? It's in the trench, and when it rains, it's going to float. So there's awful, awful disease that goes on inside of these trenches. Almost as many soldiers died from bullets as they did disease in the First World War. So it was a terrible, terrible war. As you can see, not all trenches are these crazy secure things where they're multiple level, right? I would feel pretty safe down here. I don't really feel that safe in this trench. So there are there are a variety of trenches. If you're here, again, you're probably going to get shot at some point in time. This is a depiction of going over the top, all right, into no man's land. You can see the barbed wire. You can see the artillery shells going off, all right? And then this one. This is the biggest thing to do. Okay, so World War I, what I like to call it is 19th century tactics meets 20th century technology. So the way old war was fought, right? Old war. I'm talking about swords and single shot rifles. If I had 100 men and you had 10 men, I win every time, right? I win. I win that battle because I have more manpower than you, okay? Now, if you put 20th century technology into the war, and you have 100 men, and I have 10 men, but my 10 men have automatic weapons, machine guns that fire hundreds of bullets per minute, I am going to win with my 10 men every single time. All right? So the machine gun made World War I a very defensive war. All right? When you are running at enemy trenches, you have to run through machine guns. That is very difficult to do. All right? So what the generals in World War I happened, since their training was in 19th century tactics, they just kept sending men at these machine guns, hoping to break through an enemy line. All right? That is going to lead to very, 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 very high death counts because of the 20th century technology available during World War I. All right? So when you go over the top into no man's land, not only do you have to get past the mines and the artillery shells, which is another new technology, but then you've got to conquer the machine gun fire coming at you. And many people didn't do that, which is why so many people died in the First World War. All right, and that is, again, a picture of people going over the top. You want to see this play out? Again, the movie 1917. This video is already 16 minutes, so I'm going to pick back up with part 2 very soon. All right, if you have questions, let me know. Again, the battles and whatnot, if you forget it, it's fine. Remember what I have over here in white, okay? Let me know if you have questions.